Hi guys, my name is Boiti and you're watching Joburg Today.
Do you know, if you apply for your next job, your new employer might insist on a background screening check, but what does that entail? On today's show, Cyrus Rogers has a sit down with Jennifer Barkhuizen for the record.
Jennifer, thank you so much for coming onto the show. Tell me a little bit about MIE specifically. What is it that you do?
Thank you for having me today. So MIE is Southern Africa's largest background screening company. We have a footprint in Africa where we service over 30 African countries. We provide background screening services to companies in the private and in the public sector.
So why is it important to have background screening to begin with? Is it something that employers should be thinking of doing specifically?
Most definitely. So doing thorough background screening on an individual before hiring them can help a company mitigate risk of possibly employing a person that is not qualified or they don't have the correct qualification. So it's helping mitigate financial and reputational harm for businesses. And if you think of the current economic state that we find ourselves in, we post-COVID, companies are still recovering after that. We are dealing with load shedding, which has an immense impact on businesses. So companies can no longer afford taking risks, unnecessary risks, by employing people who are not skilled and qualified to do the job that they were appointed for.
And I guess in essence, that's one of the most important factors of this. So do you deal specifically with clients of smaller sizes or large organizations? Who does this really pertain to? Is it across the board?
It is definitely across the board. If you are a one-man business or you employ 2,000 people, background screening is definitely a tool that you need to incorporate within your company. If you think of the cost of hiring a person, it's not about just physically paying a salary. It's about the time spent going through the recruitment process of getting that person on board. If you are paying benefits, you are paying benefits to that. Other people are taking time out of their day, which time equals money.
Yeah.
So if you think of it in that way, if you weigh up the cost, it's really important for companies to mitigate that beforehand. So again, if you employ one or two people, or you employ 2,000 people, it's important for you to ensure the person you are hiring can do the job.
And I guess in essence, that's it. You've got the skills portion of it. You've also got the representation portion of it in terms of who a person says that they are. So let's talk about the background screening itself. What goes into that? What do you specifically look for? Is there just one thing? Is it a whole suite of different things?
Background screening can incorporate so many different factors of a person. So it's really the process of verifying personal credentials of that person, but also to gain a deeper understanding of that person in a professional capacity and whether they would fit into your organization. So if a lot of people think, a background screening check is doing a criminal verification or a qualification verification, and don't get me wrong, that is very important information to know. But for you to get a understanding of what that person will bring to your organization. If you take psychometric assessments, for instance, that will give you an idea of if this person has applied for a specific position, it might have it's technical of nature, and they might have the correct qualifications. And if you do specific psychometric assessments beforehand, you will have a better understanding whether that person will be skilled enough in that technical position before employing them. And 3 or 6 months down the line, you find yourself in a position where the person cannot do the job. Yeah. And that is why it's so important. So it's no longer just doing a standalone criminal verification or qualification verification. Again, very important. But this process should really give you insights into that candidate and how will they fit into your organization.
So you're looking at this from a macro level as well, in essence, because you're saying, yes, we see the individual. We see that they've said that they went to X, Y, and Z school or X, Y, and Z university. But, over and above that, there is this opportunity to assess them at a level that perhaps you don't necessarily get in an interview setting or even just before that.
Most definitely. And think about it, if everybody has gone for an interview sometime in their life, you prepare, you put your game face on, and you sit there and you sell yourself, because that is what an interview is all about. You take your CV, which might be a 1 or 2 page, you say, this is what I've studied, this is where I've worked in the past, this is my credentials, and then you go and you sell yourself. And you get people that can really sell themselves, and they might not have the skill. I'm not saying I'm using an extreme example, but you can get people that they can really sell themselves, and then other people might not be able to have that, so they are reliant on their credentials. And that's why it's important for companies to take that into consideration and not take a document provided by an individual at face value. A CV can very easily be misrepresented. It's more difficult misrepresenting yourself with a qualification. There's degree mills. You can buy a qualification online for about $600 from a degree mill, and you can produce it. But then again, it's a risk. If you're employing that person without checking their qualification, that's a risk for the business, because they don't know what they will do. They can harm the reputation of the company. So that's all things to take into consideration to get a better understanding of that person, whether they will be able to do the job. Are they qualified to do the job? Do they have the skills to do the job? And eliminate any other possible risks that there might be with employing that person.
And I suppose the other thing about this is that we're looking at it specifically as the private sector, but this also has public sector responsibilities as well, because you'll also find people within the public sector who have also had issues with misrepresentation or qualifications not necessarily being up to standard. Do you feel that MIE should be able to work with, or rather, how much work do you do in the public sector specifically?
Yes, we do work within the public sector, and we work with various departments and various municipalities. And again, it's whether you are in the public or in the private sector, the importance of background screening remains the same. It's just highlighted in the news when something in the public sector goes wrong, because it's usually high level. And if those people that were caught out after the fact were just properly vetted beforehand, you know, a lot of money could have been saved by the government, where money is, as you know, a big issue at the moment. Well, not at the moment, always. And and that comes down to each organization, again, whether public or private sector, should have clear policies in place. So it doesn't matter who you know within the organization, who, you know, put nepotism to one side. Doesn't matter who you are, who you know, what your credentials are. If you are joining an organization, again, public or private sector, they need to go through the same vetting process. And that's that is why it's important for organizations to have these screening policies in place, because the screening policy will ensure the people being onboarded have been screened. Now, there might be different levels, where they would say, if you are more in a junior position, you would do X, Y, and Z checks. If you're more senior, then you might do X, Y, Z, and A, B, and C to get a full understanding of the individual. And a policy will ensure that everybody goes through this process and nobody is left out to misrepresent themselves.
Of course, we don't want that.
No, we don't.
So one of the other questions I wanted to ask you had to do with the advent of advances in technology. And we're seeing with the improvements in artificial intelligence that people are able to get a lot more information a lot quicker. Do you think that this is the kind of thing that will help in the vetting process and within those background checks and background screenings?
I truly think the possibilities are endless with artificial intelligence. And if you look at the screening that we do within social media at the moment, so we offer social media screening to companies to gain a better insight of the individual. So yes, we can see what qualifications you have, we can see your ID, we can see your marital status even. But to gain more insight, we offer social media screening services. And the company that we use, that we've partnered with, that does this, they have adopted this into the screening process, and they have an algorithm using AI to gain as much information as possible on the various social media platforms that an individual have. So if you think about 15 years ago, most people had access to one social media platform. Now, name it, a person has a profile on it. I mean, people are, I think, saving passwords like crazy in the cloud just to remember everything with all the social media profiles that's out there. And what they do when looking at the social media, they don't just look at a Facebook profile or an Instagram profile or a YouTube channel. They combine all of that information and see whether there is a risk for that employee. And they look at the type of content, because that is also very important. What type of content is shared out there?
Yeah.
Will that have a direct or an indirect effect on the company? Because remember, it can harm your brand. An employee can harm your brand with one tweet, with one Facebook post, with one image. And that's where we've really seen it work.
Yeah.
It really works. And I think the possibilities are endless, and the future for this will, the background screening industry will definitely benefit from it.
Now, I know that there will also be question marks around privacy issues in terms of what an individual's privacy should be. Do you feel that this in any way sort of is something that you take as a thought process going forward in terms of how you deal with people's privacy?
Yes, it's very important to take that into consideration. And within MIE specifically, we don't do any background screening check or verification or vet or anything for an individual if they haven't given us consent to do so. And that's also a benefit if you look at it from a company using background screening, because if you are up front, you are given a consent form to sign, a process notification form. They will sign it giving you consent to vet the information that you, whether it's again qualification, criminal. And if you are upfront about that, the chances of that individual also misrepresenting themselves are far less than it is if you don't go through the process, because they will know, okay, I'm giving consent, and if I claim to have this qualification and they vet this, it will become clear that I don't have it. And then you're starting off at a bad, how do you come back from that?
Exactly.
You can't come back from that. So that's definitely, we take it very seriously, and no background screening check is done without consent from the individual.
And I suppose to sort of end the interview itself, one of the key things in this is trust. And in essence, you're in the business of trust. From an individual perspective, when employers or prospective employers are looking at individuals and saying, we want to know if we can trust that this person that we want to bring on board is who they say they are. Do you feel that this industry has a real future going forward in terms of trying to allow people to trust the people that they're trying to hire into their organizations?
We live in a world where trust is almost out the door. And I think it's going to take a miracle to bring back that trust, trusting in your fellow man, to call it that. And with that, I think it's important for businesses to have these tools to not just go on that. You want to trust people, but I think a lot of people who has gone on their gut maybe, or have gone with trust, has had their fingers burned. So rather do your due diligence beforehand and vet the people properly to ensure that your business is safe. Because if it's your baby, you want to build that business. Yeah. You want to make it an environment where people want to work for you. And having one rotten egg within your organization could make that difficult for not only you as a company owner, but for your employees as well.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, for such an enlightening conversation.
Thank you so much.